Regular season flew by, and we were ready to preview big round one games in the IHSA playoffs on a new edition of Inside the Huddle. Brian Chimino once again with Mike Clark of the Sun-Times and Beth Long of Fox Sports and Scout.com. And let's look at Class 7A, where a very intriguing matchup. You have Batavia, who won state last year. You have Mount Carmel, who won the last two state champions in different classes.
Yeah, they're meeting in the middle, basically, because Mount Carmel won 2 years ago in 8A. They won last year in 7A. Batavia won last year in 6A. They're meeting in 7A this year. I can't remember two defending state champions meeting in the first round before. The reason we've got this matchup partly is because Mount Carmel struggled a little bit in the regular season, but they're playing really well right now. They're coming off their best game of the year by far. Great defensive effort against Loyola. Batavia, different kind of a team than they had last year. Last year, some really dominant offensive players. They had a great quarterback, great running back. This year, they've been doing it more with defense. A couple of weeks ago, in their big rivalry game against Geneva, they picked off Michael Satacaterina, who's going to Northern Illinois, the quarterback. They picked him off 5 times. So this is going to be kind of an interesting defensive matchup, I think.
Absolutely. And another prospect that we haven't talked a ton about, but does have an offer from Wisconsin and is getting a lot of Big Ten interest, is Kevin Thurman of Mount Carmel. He's a defensive tackle for them, plays D&D tackle both, but he's a kid that when he turns it on, he can play, and he can make a really big difference for the Caravan, especially going into the playoffs, because big-time players, you count on them to make big-time plays at this point in the season.
And for Mount Carmel, 29 straight years in the playoffs, has not lost a postseason game since 2011. Let's take a look at a big one in Class 8A, and we're talking about Brother Rice and the defending champions, Naperville Central.
Yeah, this is going to be a game that you kind of feel like maybe should be later in the playoffs. Brother Rice shared the Catholic League Blue title, which we've talked about is probably the deepest conference in the state this year. All 5 teams made it into the playoffs, actually. Naperville Central actually going into the playoffs with a better record than they had last year when they won it all. They're 7-2 this year as opposed to 6-3 last year. And the second loss was actually in a last-minute defeat against Wheaton South in Week 9. So this is going to be an interesting game. I mean, Naperville Central has got what you want to have going into November. They've got a great defense. Bobby McMillan is a great linebacker. Kevin Clifford is a running back who's capable of chewing up a lot of clock time. And then Brother Rice, obviously we've talked about them, all their playmakers, Alex Alarcon, Marcus Jones, Ricky Smalling. So kind of an interesting offense versus defense matchup here.
Absolutely, and as we've mentioned before, Bobby McMillan is headed to Iowa State to play linebacker there. I really think this game is going to come down to, can Naperville Central's defense shut down Brother Rice's offense? But with so many talented prospects, like we said, Marcus Jones headed to Northern Illinois, Ricky Smalling, only a sophomore, but he can make the big-time plays you need them. Guys that have stepped up. There's so many targets, it's going to be hard to shut them down or even maybe limit them. But if a defense can do it, led by Bobby McMillan, it's definitely going to be a fantastic matchup.
And a couple of regular season rematches in Week 1. Let's look at Class 7A, Lincoln Way East and Lincoln Way Central.
Yeah, that was a close one way back in Week 2. Lincoln Way East at that time was coming off their loss to Oak Park River Forest. Beat Lincoln Way Central 23-15. That was kind of when Liam Morrissey was emerging. He's become a prospect over the course of the season, somebody we didn't really know too much about coming into the season. That was one of his breakout games right there. Lincoln Way Central coming in at 5-4, but again, they played Lincoln Way East really tough that first matchup.
And another regular season rematch in Class 6A. We're talking about Glenbard South and Riverside Brookfield.
Right. This was a game that was actually played in Week 9. Glenbard South won it 38-34 to win the Metro Suburban West title. Coming back and playing again barely just a week later. This is a game that coaches around the state really don't like. There's a lot of coaches that are pushing to have 1-32 seating for every class instead of either 1-16 or 1-16 plus 2 1-8 quads. They don't like to see these regular season rematches happen so soon. They understand they may happen down the road, but they really don't like to see them this early, and the quad seating that we've had since about 2000 or so has aggravated this problem, it seems like, and again, the coaches just don't like to have to play the same teams over and over again right away.
And just because the regular season is over, it does not mean the recruiting news stops, Beth.
Recruiting never sleeps, you all. That is the first lesson you learn when you're following it. Biggest news this week, we're getting back to our roots, Illinois, those big offensive linemen. 5 offers for Hinsdale Central senior Stefan Ivanisevic. He just added offers in the last 5 weeks, so they've been rolling in pretty quickly. He's 6'5", 280 pounds, moves his feet really well, which is part of the reason why these schools are starting to recognize that. Eastern Illinois, Western Illinois, Valparaiso, Indiana State among the 5 that have offered him. Several of those schools have also offered Warren's Joey Zampano. He is a little bit bigger, 6'5", 290-pound offensive lineman who has most of his interest at the guard position. One offer from Indiana State is at the tackle position, so he's very versatile, which is something that people have been saying about him throughout the season. And lastly, Torian Lewis of TF added 2 more offers from Minnesota State and from Southern Illinois. So all of the Illinois schools doing a good job trying to keep these guys in state too, and all 3 of them are seniors.
And that'll do it for this Round 1 preview edition of Inside the Huddle. Check back next week as we let you know what happened in Round 1 and preview big Round 2 games. For Mike Clark and Beth Long, I'm Brian Chimino. We'll see you next week.